anyone need any more time for the second and third question? Okay. We can just talk through the first one. No one needs any more time on the second or third though? Going once? Going twice. Sold. Alright. So let's start talking through these. Can you see this? It's not projecting. Okay. So the very first question was, oh yeah. And so a bunch of us didn't already get this one in. Create an overall question that is non-statistical in nature and will collect numerical data. So how many students go to Hillcrest High School? Numerical? Yes. Why would it be non-statistical? There's only one answer, right? Maybe not everyone shows up every day, but yes, there's only one answer. How many chairs are in Mr. Kinney's room? 30. So non-statistical? Actually, technically only 3 chairs, 30 desks. But not to get technical. Actually, to get technical. Sorry. I don't know why I do this. Anyways, getting back to how many days are in a week? Numerical? Non-statistical? Yeah, there's no variability in that answer.
How many drugs do I have? It says dogs.
What you read was drugs? I was like, where do you get drugs?
How many drugs?
Please don't make that a question because I can figure out who asked that and I don't want to know that. How many teachers? I like all of these. Does anyone see any that we might need to address? Can't see it from
I
there?
can't see it either. I'm struggling.
How about now?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might need to get some glasses or contacts or that like that. Alright, we all good with all these? All non-statistical, all numerical? I agree. Let's move on. So, x equals negative 3 is the only solution to 3x minus 4 equals negative, oh yeah, not negative 13, because I rewrote it as 2x minus 4 equals negative 10. But still the true or false. I had the negative 3 right. Nothing else was right. That's my bad. So, line of truths. Does anyone want to share why they say false? Don't make me call you all out. Someone volunteer. You didn't say false? What? What are you confused about? Say it.
I'm not confused.
Okay. You can think of what you're trying to. So like when you subtract from a negative. Okay, so talking about when you subtract versus when you subtract a negative, something like that. Okay, so that's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was thinking when I looked at it up there, it looked more confusing than the calculator because I was trying to plug in negative 3 before.
Yeah.
But if you try to solve it first, it's like easier because then you get an answer and then you compare it to the answer.
So are there 2 different ways to answer this? 100%, right? Now, we'll just base this off of the 2x minus 4, and then I will address your question, Jada, equals negative 10. So what would you do to solve this?
Plus 4.
Add 4. So that's going to create that 0, property of equality. So this equation is equivalent, and then divide by 2. And so remember, can you grab that door, please? Don't forget, the idea is that, hey, I get this final equation here, which tells me exactly what x is equal to, and that is equivalent. Got some shirts for people?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Lexi and no name? Did anybody order a Mitchell's Mafia t-shirt besides Lexi? This is probably yours. Check to see if it's the right size to make sure it is yours. Okay?
Yeah, this is my handwriting. It says Mr. Yeah.
Okay. So x equals negative 3 would be the solution. What does that mean, though, that x equals negative 3 is the solution? it makes so remember, it makes something true. It makes that mathematical statement true, right? So 2 times -3 minus 4 is equal to -10. So Jada, this is going to help address the question you were asking, which is a fantastic question. So 2 times -3 is -6. -6 minus 4 equals -10. So this is where a lot of students actually do get confused about when I am subtracting from a negative versus when I am subtracting a negative. So let's look at this question. Does anyone know the best way to visualize and understand when you subtract a negative versus when you're subtracting from a negative? It's the simplest thing, honestly. A number line. So, go back to a number line every single time. That's what I would recommend. 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, 7, 8, 9, and -10. Okay, so where am I starting?
On the number line.
At -6 on the number line. When you subtract a number, do you move to the left or do you move to the right? To the left. Left. When you subtract, it's to the left, right? Okay? So when you subtract 4 visually, what you can think about is, okay, I'm moving 4 to the left. Right? And when you pair that understanding with the number line, it helps you realize, okay, I'm moving further to the left, which I gotta tell you, this freaked me out because I keep going to the right when I say left. Anyway. You're moving further to the left, and so that's why you get to -10, okay? But if you had something like -6 minus a -4, when you go to when you subtract, you're going to the left, right? But when it's a negative, it is the opposite of that. What is the opposite of to the left? To the right. So instead of going to the left, I actually go to the right 4, which is why we just say it's -6 plus 4. Does that make sense? Is that addressing the question you were actually asking? Okay. So please understand, like, that's one of my favorite questions, because there's things you've been told to do, and one, we might like kind of mix it up at times, but two, we might want to just understand why, right? Because you've been told to subtract a negative, you just add. Please ask me why. You ask why, you're going to learn way more. Does that help everything you were asking? Okay. We ready to move on to the next question, which I think I got this one right. All right. So x equals 4 is the only solution to x squared minus 4 equals 12. Again, I got mostly trues on this one, but I did get a few falses. Anyone who say false want to share why they said false? Do I need to call people out? Give y'all a chance to volunteer. CD, Jeremiah, Kyla, and Jaden all said that this is a false statement. Why did we say this is a false statement? Yes, sir. It did not. So what did you do to solve this equation? Okay, so what property of equality did you use? So you used addition. So that's creating that 0. X squared is equal to 16. And then what'd you do? You square it?
No, I looked like that. I looked like that.
You looked like that? Because notice, can we multiply, divide, add, or subtract here? No. What could I do for x squared? It's already being squared. I need something that's going to undo a square. A square root might be able to do it. Remember, multiplication, right, is the inverse of division. I need the inverse of a square, which would be a square root. Okay? A square root can undo this. All right? And so, when I take a square root, what do I get? If we're not sure, what do you have in your hands that you can use? A 4, right? You got calculators though. Notice 4 squared minus 4 equals 12. Do you have to solve it all the way out in order to determine if that's the solution? No, if it's a solution, it makes the equation true, right? What is 4 squared? 16 minus 4? 12. 12, does that equal 12? Yeah, so 4 is a solution. Jeremiah, why were you thinking it's not a solution? I didn't know, Mr. Kinney, I just clicked something. Is that what it is? Huh? Just gonna stay silent, Jeremiah? What's up? What were you thinking? You what? Okay. Let's not just click something. Let's talk to those around us. It's going to help you way more if you think about it ahead of time, right? And then we have a discussion about it. So, yes, ma'am.
Exactly. It's like a question like, a car has a 16-gallon fuel tank.
Wait,
How many
what?
miles has the car traveled before the amounts of gas are left in the tank?
X squared minus 4 is equal to 12.
He only wrote one because he has a 16
Yeah, X equals 4.
fuel tank.
That's X equals 4. I said X equals 4 is a solution. Okay, so on the last equation, it was correct that negative 3 was the only solution. But let's look right here.
But it's asking for mine.
When you get to this point, this is actually where it's easier to think about it. Is 4 squared equal to 16?
I'm confusing myself.
Gracie and Jaden, you want to pay attention to this one.
I'm sorry.
Does 4 squared equal 16? Yes? Okay. Is there any other number squared that would equal 16? Sure about that? No, it's not. That's negative 4. Negative 4 is over here to the left of 0. 4 is over here to the right of 0. So is 4 the only solution? No. Okay. This is going to help us getting into a lesson that we have either later today or tomorrow. But I do want you to notice, when you actually take the square root, even though it's only going to give you a 4, you need to recognize when you square a negative, it also becomes what? So x equals plus or minus 4 is the solution. Does that make sense? Okay. Please understand, I knew that that was going to trip most of us up. I use it as a learning opportunity because mistakes are the best thing you can make. Investigate mistakes, learn from them, grow from them. Okay? Do we understand why there are 2 solutions to this equation now? Good? Yes, Mr. Kinney, we're great. Thanks, guys. All right, moving on. Jada, you said you had questions about the homework. Okay? Really quickly, I'm going to let y'all ask a handful of questions about the homework, and then you can turn it in during enrichment if you want to still get it in on time today and not be late. But I want to point this out. This is why I give you the homework ahead of time so that you can work through homework, and then the day before when I ask, hey, what questions do you have, you can ask those questions. Okay? So please, in the future, and please understand, I know that we literally just finished 2 weeks in here, and the first half a week or so was literally just us getting to know each other, okay? So we haven't been doing homework a lot, but I give you options, lots of days for you to figure out when you're going to do the homework, but you need to get on the homework ahead of time so that you can ask questions. Tonight, I would work on that lesson 20 homework so that tomorrow you can come in and ask questions before it's due on Monday. Okay? What questions did you have, Jada? B? 1B? Okay? So write an equation that represents the relationship between the distance the car has traveled in miles and the amount of gas left in the tank in gallons X. So the car has a 16-gallon fuel tank. When driven on a highway, it has a gas mileage of 30 miles per gallon. The gas mileage, also called fuel efficiency, tells us the number of miles the car can travel for a particular amount of fuel. Okay? After filling the gas tank, the driver got on a highway and drove for a while. So how many miles has the car traveled if it has the following amount of gas left in the tank? So if they have 15 gallons left, how many gallons have they used? They've used 1, right? How did you get that 1? thought about it. Okay, let me ask this then. Is there a mathematical operation that you could use to get the 1 from that 15? Subtraction, right? 16 minus 15, that's equal to 1. Notice how I created an expression because I already know ahead of time, is that 16 ever going to change? Could the 15 change? Very much so. Because if I know that something can change, when am I probably going to have to make it in the future? A variable. Notice I'm not just starting with writing numbers, I'm going ahead and thinking about, hey, what can change and what would have to stay the same? Does that start to help us, Jamin? Okay? So, I would also say, pay attention to your units. So 16 minus 15 gallons, okay? How could you then figure out how many miles that car has driven? If we already know it's 30 miles per gallon. Is it just multiplying by 30? 30 what? Miles per. If you are dealing with a real-world contextual problem, pay attention to your units. Because, hey, what is gallons divided by gallons? 1. So what unit am I left in? Is that what I want? Miles? A distance driven? So, 30 miles. Does that make sense? Yeah, very much so. Okay, what about if you have 10 gallons left? 16 minus 10, which is the 6 you were talking about. Alright, once I've done the units one time, I might drop it off, but it probably would still be a good idea to keep it, to keep track of it each time. Does it still be 30 miles per gallon? And so how far are they driven? 180 miles. Now, I want to point this out. Some of us probably just figured it out without writing that expression. Is that fair to say? We didn't write this expression every time? No? Did it get hard to do B then? Okay, you're still able to figure it out from there? Personally, I'm going to try to create expressions with the numbers so that I can figure out what's going to be a constant, what's going to be a variable, and I can approach it that way. Okay? Jada, what do you think B would be based on this information? So the number of miles driven is going to equal what? Look at what we did. Look at what's changing. Look at what's not changing. Jay, what's staying exactly the same in both expressions? The what? The gallon, so this is staying the same? Or just part of it? Okay, so which part? Started to say the same there. Jaden, look at the numbers. What is the only number that's staying the same? So is that going to change in our formula? No. So it's still going to be a 16. What is changing? The other part of the gallons, remember that's the amount of gallons left in the tank. Okay, what do we have to use to represent something that can change? A variable, right? So minus X gallons. See how the 16 stayed the same, boom. That 15 and that 10 was changing, it'll change in the third one as well. So that's going to be my variable here. Jada, has that 30 changed at all? Is it going to change later? So am I going to use a variable? No. So I'm just going to multiply by 30. Please don't make it more complicated than that. There are other ways to do it as well. You could note, hey, I'm starting with 480 miles, right? If you have a 16-gallon tank at 30 miles per gallon, you could say, hey, I'm starting at 480 miles, and then you're just taking away 30 miles every gallon. That's another way to write that equation. Lots of options, your choice. Yes? Well, think about it this way. If you only have 2.5 gallons left, have you used more gas or less gas? You only have 2.5 gallons left. So you're using way more gas. So have you got more mileage? Yes. Does that make sense? And that's the difficulty here. All right. JD, are there any other questions that you want to specifically ask before I let you work on it? Was it just that question? Okay. How many gallons are left in the tank when the car has traveled the following distances on the highway? If the distance is 90 miles, right? It has traveled 90 miles. Could you use this equation at all to help you figure out how many gallons are left? How so? You see how that D would represent miles? So that 90 could be substituted in for D. Solve the equation from there. Okay? Get it back to me before you leave school today. I will not count it late.
Can I turn it in now?
I will collect it once y'all start on the work for today. Yes, ma'am. I promise I will figure out a more efficient system soon, but I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with the hanging file thing. Which is how I used to collect it. Alright.
So 16 minus 2.5
13.
is 13, yeah, 0.5, and then times 30. Oh, okay, it's supposed to get bigger as it goes up, because I got a big number and then I was like,
Yeah, and that's
I
what
thought it was,
that's what we were asking earlier is remember we have less gas left, so we've used more gas.
yeah.
Okay? Alright, let's get started on today's lesson. Way later than meant to. It's okay. Technology issues, all the fun stuff. Right? Nope, not third block. First block. Okay. So we are going to wait, is this the right one? Maybe I forgot to update this agenda. We are in lesson 20. We finished up lesson 9, right?
Yeah, I think we.
Yep, that's the third block. Sorry, third block did not quite finish lesson 9. That's the first block. Okay. Yep, lesson 20, writing and solving inequalities in one variable. That's what we're picking up today. If time, break to ask some questions about the homework before we jump into the absolute value equations and inequalities. Well, I am assuming I'll need to devote more time to the questions tomorrow from the lesson 20 homework, but that's the plan for today. Please put the lesson 9 homework away for right now so that we can focus and learn today and work on it during enrichment. Who's someone I haven't asked to read objectives? Is there anybody I haven't asked at all? And I don't ask y'all much because it's hard to be able to see the board from there. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Jeremiah, can you read our first objective for us today? Have you ever thought about inequalities and how they relate to equations at all?
What would I make about it? Me, then.
Do you solve them differently?
I don't even know what you're talking
Okay, does anyone have an example of an inequality? Because we made one yesterday for lesson 20 to start. I mean, how about you look at lesson 20, look at the inequality we wrote.
about. That's not something that just pops in my head.
60 is what? So, what was the other?
It was like 60.
That should be this one.
The budget was 60.
Yeah. So it's 2 times 2.49. Was it, you say P per pound? And so I think we actually wrote it this way. Okay, so it's not any different. We'll talk about why in a second. So Gracie, what do we mean by an inequality? What do we mean by an inequality?
Thing.
Any guesses what that thing is called?
No.
Hint is that it's an inequality. For an equation or equality, we have an equal sign. For an inequality, we would have an inequality sign. That's all it is, right? It's an inequality sign. So remember what an inequality is saying is that they're not equal. Specifically in this case, the amount of money we can spend has to be what? It has to be less than or equal to 60. We can't spend over 60 bucks, right? If we're being really legit with it, we would include sales tax, but we're not stressing about that right now. Does that make sense, Gracie? So I go back to the question of, have you ever thought about how it relates to an equation? No? How it relates to an equation. You still got to solve, you still got to find what values make the inequality true, right? So I will go ahead and tell you this. Y'all had to draw a number line, right? And shade where the solutions are on a number line. In the past, have you always just had to memorize which direction to go on the number line? Yeah? Did you know there's a way easier way to do it? Kind of. I'll show you, and it's all built on understanding the equation, right? So there's a much easier way than having to memorize. It's built on understanding the equation, which is why I have this objective up there. And Grayson, can you read our last objective for us? Okay, so remember, math without a real world is lame. That's the whole reason math exists. So we're going to write and solve inequalities to answer questions about a situation. We started here with number 1, right? So represent the constraints in the situation mathematically. Boom, we did that, right? So now we're on to number 2. How many pounds of prepared dishes can Kieran buy? Explain or show your reasoning. Work with your group. Figure out how you might solve the inequality based on what you've done in the past. We'll come back together and have a whole class discussion about that number 2 soon. If you get done early, move on to 20.2. Yes, ma'am? Yes. Yeah, sorry. I'll let them move off the theta students right on desk for our meeting today. Here you go. All right. So you can use your desk, you can use the whiteboards, the chalkboards, whatever you want.